Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Glory Glory Man United podcast. I'm your host, as always, Kyle Quinn. And joining me today is Nigel. Good to have you back on the show again, Nigel.
Thanks, Kyle. Good to be here.
Yeah, it's good to be here and good to talk about Manchester United, as always. And there's lots happening, and finally, we've made our first signing of the summer. So, first of all, I'm going to give my thoughts on Mason Mount. My monologue might be a bit long winded, and then you can give your response. So, it was quite telling that Chelsea fans online and on the radio are extremely unhappy about this transfer. He was the first Chelsea Academy graduate to establish himself in the first team since John Terry. He was a firm fan favourite, and Rory Jennings, who's a prominent podcaster, and he's a radio show on Talksport. He's a Chelsea supporter, and he says the fans are extremely angry about this with the club and with the player himself. Obviously, none of that matters to us as United fans, but it does tell you how much of a good player he is and how valued he was at Chelsea. Um, the player himself, I think he epitomises everything Ten Hag wants in midfield. He's energetic. He presses. He'll be involved in the counter press. He gets goals and assists. I watched a video of all his goals for Chelsea. You've seen lots of variety there. Left foot, right foot, taking the ball off defenders on the edge of their own box, slotted in the corner, scoring free kicks, and being there for pullbacks and topping it in. And gets all kinds of goals from inside and outside the box. Um, he, I'm expecting him to get 10 goals and 10 assists for United this season. He's proved he can do that already in the Premier League. So overall, I'm very satisfied with this signing. Casemiro and Ericsson, as we know, are 31 now. Mason Mount's in a different age bracket. He's 24, and that's what we need to look up. We need to start building long term. So, what's your thoughts on it, then, Nigel?
Well, I'm very happy about the signing. Any signing at the moment would be good, but we've signed a Champions League winner. In fact, I recall that he made the goal in the final, and he's a forward-thinking player. I don't think he wants to think about defence at all. And obviously, Ten Hag's done his homework. He knows about his period in Holland, and as you say, the podcast that I've listened to in the sports programs, particularly at night, shows how unhappy Chelsea fans are. This guy's a classy player. What I want to is, I love his free kicks. It's a long, long time since we scored. You called it recently. We got a goal from a free kick. And Bruno can't keep taking these ones when he's not hitting the target. It needs to be in pre-season training. Let's have a look at that. And on the tour of America, etc., let's have him take a few free kicks, get his confidence back. Take a while, obviously, in a new team. But I'm excited by the signing. He can play various positions, and even he can play wide if need be. So he's a right-sided player, and we've left-footed players playing on the right. So if need be, if players aren't playing well, say Anthony, for example, let's try him out in the right and bring Ericsson on as well. Obviously, Ericsson will be impacted by this. Mount's going to start most weeks, and he's good enough, Ericsson, to come on and have a cameo half an hour, game in and game out, and play him only periodically now and again in matches in Europe, maybe against the lesser teams. But we can talk about that later, about who they may or may not draw in Europe.
That's another reason why I'm happy about this signing, because finally Ericsson will be able to play the role that was meant for him last summer. I think he was supposed to come in and be like a backup to Frankie De Jong. He ended up being a frequent member of the starting 11. And as we know, he doesn't have the energy or the legs to play twice a week. And this signing will allow him, like you say, to come on as a substitute, to change games, allow us to rotate in certain games, play against kind of the lesser opposition or in European games. Um, yeah, so the fact that Ericsson can now not be overutilized is another plus in terms of the signing. You mentioned the free kicks there, just like with Ericsson, how many free kicks is Bruno going to allow Mason Mount to take? That's the problem.
It is big problem. I'm hoping he can take corners from both sides as well. That would be another thing that would be very useful, because we're very predictable. I often say to you and others that why bring our centre halves up here, because we're not getting the decent quality of ball into the middle to be attacked. The ball needs to be attacked, and if it's floated in at the right pace with somebody who knows how to do it, we could start scoring goals in corners. I mean, it's vital in the top league to not have all your eggs in one basket. You must have variety and quality in all parts of the pitch.
Yeah, quite often we rely on Luke Shaw to take corners, and sometimes he's playing centre back. You having your centre back taking corners? It's absolutely ridiculous.
Absolutely. Can you imagine Pep but having a team talk when we're playing City? And if that's still happening, he'll manipulate that and we'll be exposed. It's and Shaw isn't always the fittest of players. He can't get back from both sides of the pitch, and then, as you say, back to centre half or left back. It's a weakness, and they'll expose it.
Yeah, traditionally you'd want your centre halves in the middle, not taking the corner. Um, but it's good that Luke Shaw has provided a lot of crosses and free kicks for like Casemiro to get on the end of, and hopefully Mason Mount can do something similar. Yeah, so like you say, he's a versatile player. He can play on the left. He can play as a number 10. He can play as one of the number 8s. It'd be interesting to see. We're expecting the first choice midfield will be Casemiro, Bruno, and Mount. I'm just interesting to see what position they're playing in. We fully expect Casemiro to play in the deepest role, at number 6. Are Mount and Bruno going to be like roaming eights, or is like one of them going to be at number 10, one of them going to be slightly deeper alongside Casemiro? You could probably change it up. Bruno could play number 10 and Mount could play number 8, and then they could swap them around depending on who we're playing. Because we've seen last season, there was a few games there towards the back end of the season where Bruno was playing alongside Casemiro, and he
Mhm.
was spraying the ball left and right, like Scorsese used to do. So it provides us with a lot of options there, doesn't it?
It does, and let's see what happens on the tour, Kyle. He'll be able to experiment and try out different things, and depending what time different players get back at different times, whether they played international football. But as early as possible, let's see what we make of the first choice midfield and take it from there. But it's an exciting time. It's something different. And boy, the days of McTominay and Fred, we have to have better than that. Mount is much, much better than that. And he'll score more goals than both of them combined in a 38 game season. So I'm really excited about that prospect.
Yeah, he absolutely should, and he's much better on the ball than those two players you mentioned. Um, just I mentioned there what's in the compilation of his goals for Chelsea, and there was a lot of them that really stood out. But one in terms of his ability on the ball, I think he scored against Porto in the Champions League, and he just spun away from the defender and then hit the ball like an arrow into the bottom left hand corner. That was a magnificent goal, wasn't it?
Yeah, you sent me that link. I really enjoyed that. That it got me excited again. I mean, you just can't wait. We're sitting here, what, 5 weeks out, but at least on MUTV, we'll see all the preseason friendlies there covering all that. So I always like you might play Couple Menu in a few of them if others aren't available, and I want to see exactly why he's been retained and Iqbal is gone. I mean, Iqbal spent 20 games on the bench and didn't get a chance by Ten Hag. So Ten Hag's made a call there and let him go. Some media speculation that there was a fallout between the manager and Iqbal. I don't know what you've read on that, but certainly he's dispatched him like he did with Garner pretty quickly.
Well, we can only speculate about what happened, but if there's certain players in training, young players in particular, who are not pulling their weight or slacking off in training, and the manager will notice that. And um, I suppose established players like Rashford, who was famously late for training and
Mhm.
dropped against Wolves, um, he will obviously be retained. But if like a young player who's trying to make a good impression is showing ill discipline when it comes to training, then that'll put the manager off the player. Um, unless he's an exceptional talent. I think Garnacho preseason last year. I think there was
He
a
turned up late a few times, and
yeah the team meetings. Yeah,
yes, yeah, and even inter squad stuff, he didn't turn up at the right time, so it meant the manager's preparations were knocked out. So he was called into the office and told very clearly he'd have to knuckle down and wait, and he did have to wait. To be fair, the manager was the same way. He took that choice of dealing with Rashford, even though he was scoring goals for fun at that stage. And then, of course, he came off the bench and scored. So, and Rashford didn't think anything of it, thought the manager was right. So, if the players have respect for the new manager, they didn't have a lot of respect, as we all know, for the previous two incumbents of the managerial role. So, this is a good sign that things have to be run properly.
Yeah, if Garnacho is an exceptional, as some might say, a generational talent. So that's why Ten Hag stuck with him, and give him a 5-year contract. But we have been told by reporters that Ten Hag will only give youngsters a chance in the first team if he believes that they've got a very high ceiling. And we've probably seen that. He doesn't give certain youngsters chances, on others he does. So if he believes they can make it to the very top, then he'll persist with them. On others like Iqbal, and even Ethan Laird, and they've just been sold on a permanent basis. So clearly does not have any faith in them. But I just read quite recently that, which was a bit unexpected, that Ten Hag is a big fan of Palestri and wants to retain him. It certainly didn't seem that way last season with the lack of minutes that he was in.
I know I was most, my feelings on that. I couldn't understand, especially with Jadon Sancho off his game as much as he was. He played far too long and far too often when his confidence had gone. He played the odd good game, Kyle, but you had Palestri who wanted a game, wanted to prove, and for whatever reason this season, he just didn't give him that opportunity. And all the podcasts that I listened to, everybody seemed to be the same as you and me, that Palestri didn't get enough game time.
Well, it's going to be fascinating to see which one is retained and which one is let go in terms of Ahmad and Palestri. Because, like
Mm.
I've said in previous podcasts, I don't think there's room for both of them in the squad because they play the same position. Um, so whatever one he favor, maybe they'll get pre-season to prove to the manager which one he should have as Anthony's backup this season, and then the other one might be either loaned out or sold permanently. Um,
Yeah.
we'll get on to a wee bit more of that later in the show in terms of Armada. There's a discussion around him, and that's been ongoing during the summer. Um, yeah, so we've been able to take advantage of the fact that the upheaval at Chelsea with Todd Bowley coming in. Now they were handing out contracts to the likes of Koulibaly and Abanyang, like for 300 grand a week, whereas Mason Mount was apparently sitting on 90 grand a week.
Yeah.
And they were offering him, a very modest pay raise. And then you probably had Ten Hag in his ear, telling him how great he was. Come and play for me. You'll be a star in my team. And
Yeah.
obviously he was swayed by that. And I think what Chelsea have actually done is offered him a big contract when he had one foot out the door. Now, famously, that happened with Carlos Tevez. Whenever he was eventually offered the deal that he
Mhm.
wanted, he was already gone. So it's just nothing more than a chocolate
Absolutely.
jet.
Absolutely. I think what happened to at Chelsea was that Mason Mount and Reece James were very close, grew up together, and they gave a huge pay rise to Reece James. And
Hmm.
Mount's agent went in or rang the club and said, I want my player on the same terms. They're equally as important. I mean, Reece James is in the full back line, whilst Mount, as you say, was scoring goals and really playing at the highest level, Champions League, and yet they didn't meet that. So I think after that, I'm led to believe he just said, I want out. I'm not staying. They don't respect my talents. They're not putting me on the same level as my mate Reece. That so happens in football. They talk about it. It's like Luke Shaw talking to Mason Mount when they're away from England, and things like salaries and contracts all come up. It's just human nature in footballers, and Chelsea didn't handle that well. So hopefully he'll come to a club where Ten Hag knows his background, wants him there. Mason Mount wants to play for our club, and we only want players at our club that want to play and win things with us, and he obviously does. He hasn't peaked yet. Remember, he's only 24. We've got 5 years of this guy getting better and better. And if the fans love him, he'll know what it's like to be loved at Old Trafford when he comes onto the pitch, and he'll play all the better because of that, Kyle.
And another fantastic thing about this is that he's Ten Hag's first choice signing. Like quite often in the last 10 years, we've had to settle for third choice and fourth choice because we weren't able to get the first choice for either they didn't want to come to the club because they were in the Europa League or whatever reason it was. We had better offers from Real Madrid or Bayern Munich, and but now Ten Hag was able to get the player that he wanted in that position. and that's pleasing. Because he played in Holland for Vitesse,
Yeah,
and because of his performances there, he really stood out. Ten Hag wanted to bring him to Ajax, or Ajax, as you would say,
yeah.
and he decided to bring him to Old Trafford 5 years later. So he's a player that he's been watching and sees him as an alternative to De Jong, and thankfully we won't have to put up with that saga, as 2 summers running. So I'm very, very pleased about this, and I'm expecting big things. Now, quite often we say a player might need a settling in period because he's coming from, a European league or
Yeah.
a South American league, but he shouldn't need that at all. He should adapt by very quickly, shouldn't he?
Oh, he should, yeah. He's got, what, 129 games already for Chelsea, and he's only 24. Knows the big atmosphere of a London fixture, so he's coming down to Manchester, and when he's involved in the heat of a United Liverpool game, he'll want to prove that he's at that standard. So I'm expecting big things from him in games like that.
Yeah, and hopefully this is only the beginning of our summer business. I am slightly concerned, that we're going to sign about 3 players at the most if this ownership continues to the end of the window. And I think if the next player we sign, that'll probably be our budget gone, and then after that, we'll for to make a third signing, we'll have to rely on selling about 3 or 4 players. And that's obviously important no matter what, because there's too many hangers on at this club, too many substandard footballers, as you would say. You got your McTominay, Fred, Maguire, Martial. You've Dean Henderson there, who is a bit of value to him. We need to move these players on, and then it'll raise a lot of money and will improve our quality of our squad at the same time. I'm quite happy to get rid of 6 players and bring in 3. Because our squad's very, very bloated as well, isn't it?
No, it is, and the problem is, Kyle, we're no better at selling players than we are at buying players, and I just thought it was ironic that it came up on one of the screens today about the Alessio Russo for the women's United team, who the United were offered big money, I think 500,000 at one stage, and they wouldn't agree to that. Now she's like has happened in the men's game at Old Trafford. She's moving across to a bigger club as she sees it and getting a contract there, and we got no money. She left on a free. So if and when, and as soon as possible, the club's taken over by whoever, let's get some of these guys behind the scenes weeded out and get some fresh blood and people who know how to deal with negotiation and scouting properly.
Well, just like Old Trafford and the training ground, it's been very, very underfunded and neglected, and that's what's happened to the women's team as well. Glazers do not want to fund the women's team, and that's why their facilities have been a shambles. They're not paying the wages that the other women's teams do, like Arsenal and Manchester City and Chelsea. So this is why we lose the top talents in the women's game as well.
Yeah, yeah, it's got to be changed. There needs new blood at management levels within the administration, but that'll happen when they're taking over. The people that have been sitting there for years coasting along, I don't think will be there. Say 12 months later, they'll probably do a contract closure bit and get paid off or something like that. But it needs sorted out. We're sitting around watching Liverpool and City and Arsenal buy players with no difficulty at all. And thankfully, it wasn't as protracted as last year. We've got mine now, but it still took 2 or 3 bids and the media going mad. When's it going to happen? Is it going to happen? We don't want our club involved in that sort of protracted minimal negotiation. It should be the biggest club in the world that we believe we are should be making things more easy for ourselves to get signings done early and get them into pre-season training, get them on tour together to play together. Last year, you remember how late the last 3 signings were made? It was ridiculous after they'd lost a few games in August.
Yeah, we famously lost 4-0 to Brentford, and Casemiro told his agent, "Don't worry, tell them I'll fix this," and he certainly did.
He certainly did, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's good to get our first signing done and dusted, because imagine if we'd got to the 4th of July, Independence Day, and there was no signings at all. It would have been an absolute shambles. So we need to move on now, and get to the next one. Now, we presume that a striker and a goalkeeper is going to be a priority, because of course, the players were back for pre-season yesterday, Monday,
Yeah.
and there's no David De Gea because he's out of contract. He's not employed by the club anymore.
Mm.
Um, Now, I'd be fully supportive of this player. I think he's on honeymoon with his new wife. I'd be fully supportive of this player to get a testimonial, but I do not want him to get a new contract because I think, he's been a great servant, but I think the game has passed him by now. The top teams have goalkeepers who are brilliant at coming off their line and with their feet, and he just doesn't. Like Ten Hag has given him every opportunity to produce that new skill, but he hasn't done so. So I think, and even now he's making like the one thing that he's good at is the shot stopping, and he's making errors with that too. So I think the time is right now, just to let him go. And bring in a new goalkeeper. I think that's what United are trying to do. I think their opening offer for the Inter Milan keeper Onana, who of course has worked with Ten Hag before, it's a common theme, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's 40 million euros. Now again, United. This is United being United. I mean, they were told that it would have to be at least 50 million euros plus bonuses. And United's opening offer is 40 million euro. It's just the same old, isn't it? It's just
yeah.
they frustrate the process.
It's a tactic that doesn't work. They've tried it a
Yeah.
dozen times. It just doesn't work. And the Fellaini was the worst of all. The 27 million offer before for both Leighton Baines and Fellaini, and then they end up panicking at the end of August and paying the whole 27 million on Fellaini, who in my view is a fairly average footballer. We're entitled to better footballers than that at Old Trafford.
Yeah, and that was the beginning. We thought that might have been just a one-off, but that was the beginning of the embarrassment under Ed Woodward. Um, Now I believe that Ten Hag may look at alternatives to Onana if we're priced out of that one. I think eventually we'll come to an arrangement because Onana wants to join Ten Hag and Manchester United. Um, so I think that one will eventually get done. But one of the alternative names been linked is the Faranoid keeper, who's played a number of times for Holland. Um, Now the pronunciation's obviously right. His first name's Justin, and his second name is Bielo. I think I'm sure I've got that wrong. Someone might be able to correct me on that. But he's a young goalkeeper who's part of the Feyenoord team who won the Eredivisie last season, and he's a Dutch international under Ronald Koeman. So he might be a cheap alternative to Onana if we're not able to get that one over the line. But I think we will. 50 million plus bonuses for a top keeper who's probably the best in the world with his feet. It's probably a reasonable amount of money, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, I would say so. He's a very self-confident player too. He actually believes that he's as good as people make him out to be without being overboard. He's a wee bit eccentric, a little like Bartes was all those years ago. But the discipline that Ten Hag has within his squad now, I'm sure they'll work on that, and without doubt he could prove to be a top quality keeper. And as you say, we need to move on. We definitely need improvements. I don't believe that Varane and Lisa playing in front of De Gea, I think it just was going downhill, and they didn't know, as you quite rightly say, he wouldn't use his hands to fist the ball. He wouldn't come, and they don't know what's going on behind him. And that's no good. You need a steady back four with a good goalkeeper, and then you move on up the pitch and get that right.
Yeah, and opposition teams target him. Whenever De Gea is in possession with his feet, they push up and try and put him on the pressure. Um, when corners come in, the big strikers or defenders kind of stand in front of him to try
Yeah,
and block him from coming off his line. I don't know why, because he's not going to come off his line anyway.
no,
But they feel they can get at him and intimidate him, and that's been a theme for a lot of the 12 years, especially at the start on at the end. So it'd be great to have a self-confident goalkeeper with such ability. Now he's going to improve our play. This goalkeeper Onana, he likes to, he like we've seen in Gaelic football, players like goalkeepers like to come off their line and get involved in the play. Like we'll see that from Onana as well.
yeah.
Um, and he can spray the ball out to a winger, left and right too. And he knows when to play the right pass at the right time. He just won't do it for the sake of it. But we probably will see the odd occasion where he'll try to nutmeg a striker and he'll get caught out.
Mm.
Because, but as long as the good outweighs the bad, that's the important thing. As long as he's a big improvement on what De Gea has to offer, then it'll be a worthwhile signing. Now the other position we need to strengthen in is obviously centre forward.
Mm.
If we had our way as fans, that would be the first player to come in, but that market is proven very difficult. Um, there isn't many top class strikers out there that are available. The names obviously being mentioned are Keane and Oshiman. We're going to be priced out of both of those. It doesn't seem like either of those strikers are going to be on the move this summer, given the sums that are being quoted. Especially Oshiman, who's like they're like Napoli are demanding 150 million euros, and because that that striker with at that level is so rare, you can understand why they put their price up to that amount. So that doesn't seem like a gore at all. So this is why we've been linked with young strikers with a lot of potential, like Rasmus Højlund, the Danish striker, being the number one target. Again, they Atlanta put their price up massively, with United are not going to be willing to meet that. Obviously, they're going to have to come away down for a deal to be struck there. But if we're going to look at the likes of him, a 20-year-old Danish striker, he hasn't played that much football.
Mm.
We should also look at someone like Ivan Ferguson, the Irish striker at Brighton, because he's played probably a slightly less football, and he's 18 obviously, but he's got that Premier League experience, albeit only a small amount, and he's shown he can score goals. So if we're going to take a risk on a striker from Serie A, I don't see why we shouldn't take a risk on a young Premier League striker.
Oh, I agree totally. And Ferguson has played 5 games for the Republic too, and not looked out of sorts in an international level. And he looks like a genuine guy who can both score with both feet, and he's a good header of the ball. Kyle, get him young enough, but he has just signed a 5-year contract, so I wouldn't imagine that he would become available the next summer rather than this summer. But I could be wrong. Uh,
Probably, unless United are so desperate in the last week of August, they offer Brighton £70 million, and they accept the offer. Probably what would be quoted anyway, because, like I say, he's got a 5-year contract, and clubs know we're desperate. They know we're desperate. That's why everybody knows Man United need a striker. So when Man United come calling, the price goes up about 30 or 40 million, doesn't it?
yeah, it does. Called the English tax, they're calling it, but. What about the fella, the striker that Mark Robbins has at Coventry? If all goes wrong and those top players just won't leave the club, or we're outpriced, would he be a possibility to come in and see how he would get on? Anything's an improvement on Martial. He certainly scored a lot of goals and had a lot of assists for Coventry. I can't remember his name. Kyle, it comes to you may know it.
The Swedish striker you're talking about,
Yeah,
Victor G. I can't
yeah.
pronounce that.
That's why
Somebody
I
will have,
can't remember it.
yeah, somebody will
Yeah,
have to help me out.
yeah,
His name is Victor Giorkers, something like that. Yeah, and he was at Brighton Hove Albion
he
for
was.
3 years, but he was on loan at Coventry, and now he's there on a permanent basis. Yeah, and he scored 38 league goals for Coventry, and he also has 14 caps for Sweden, including 3 goals there. Um, Certainly be worth a punt, because you know we need to get a body in, someone, and the best, if we can't get the best strikers in Europe who are in their prime, then we should, rather than go for someone in their 30s, or someone like Vigors who's just not at the level required. We should just
No.
take a punt on a young player who might be able to, who might get better. So yeah, somebody is better than no one, and I don't want to go down the, like I said, the Vicors route, the Gallo route. I'd rather
No.
just take a punt on a young 20-year-old with potential.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And if we spend the money on the goalkeeper, I don't think we'll have the money left under those rules to actually pay upwards of 80 million plus for a centre forward. So we're going to have to look elsewhere, and he's an option from what I can see. Maybe 18, 20 million you might get him for. That's what I mean. That's more in the ballpark that with the restrictions on finance that's currently in tow at Old Trafford.
Yeah, if we would just get someone to tie us over to next summer, and then with the new ownership in place, hopefully we could look at getting an Osherman in for big money,
Yeah.
or we could get Harry Kane on a free transfer next summer as well. That would be an
Oh,
option.
yeah, definitely. Or things don't go well between now and January. Would Daniel Levy say I'll have to get something for this player rather than let him go, you wouldn't know what would happen. So I just think you're not going to see Harry Kane leave Spurs from what I gather now.
Yeah, I was saying this on the podcast with Brush is that he's more valuable to Spurs than the money. Um, one season with Harry Kane is more valuable to them than £80 million. So this is why they're not willing to let him go unless there's an extreme offer that comes in. Because how are you going to replace Harry Kane? How would you replace him?
He couldn't. He really is that good, and he's just not a guy that scores goals. When he comes back and lays the ball off, he can create. He's got a football mind. I'm very impressed with his record. Brilliant for one club what he's done since he signed for the club.
Yeah, he is so good that like, we've got Mason Mount. If we signed Onana, and then Kane as well, so if it was Mount, Onana, and Kane, that would probably be enough to mount a title challenge even against Manchester City because Kane is just going to, for the
Yeah.
amount of chances that we create, like he's going to get about 30 goals in the Premier League.
Oh, without a doubt. And Bruno is a very good man for finding people at the back post and the near post. If Bruno, when he's in top form, his delivery's magic. Harry Kane scored lots of goals from Bruno crosses, etc.
Yeah, definitely. And penalties, he doesn't miss many penalties either.
He
Um,
doesn't.
yeah, so he would get plenty of goals for United if he came in, but it doesn't seem likely at the moment. Now, our fourth biggest priority this summer is apparently a backup for Casemiro. And a player being linked with that is Sufyan Amrabat, who played for Morocco in the World Cup and when they got to the semi-finals. He currently plays for Fiorentina, who of course played against West Ham in the Europa Conference League final. Um, and he was magnificent in the World Cup for Morocco. And the idea of him coming in and being a backup to Casemiro, he's 26 years old. I think he was born in the Netherlands. Yeah, he looked. I know you can't always judge people on international tournaments, but he looked very impressive. And if he was available for a very small fee in around the 20 to 25 million mark, to get someone in there to provide cover for Casemiro, who can sometimes get suspended, as we know, then that would be valuable because we keep coming back to it. Man City's bench, every one of them would get in the other 19 teams in the Premier League. So we need to be having a very strong bench, don't we?
Yeah, we do. But I agree with you about that guy's talent. I remember him in the World Cup. I was amazed at his technique and his quality on the ball and his delivery very early. Didn't hold on to it too long. If he saw somebody up front move, he found them. Very, very good quality player. And that sort of money, if you can possibly get him in, I'd get him in.
Yeah, but like I said earlier, every other club will be quoted 20 million. United will be quoted 40, and
Mm,
that's always a problem.
yeah.
Um, we need to shake off that reputation of being pushovers, and that was developed under Ed Woodward. Um, Whenever we're charged too much, we need to walk away, like Manchester City have done so many times. Like Manchester City walked away from signing Alexis Sanchez, Maguire, and Fred, and then we were mug enough to go in there and do those deals. And I wish that City had won those races to sign those players.
So do I. So do I. It was tragic, those signings. Absolutely. Well, Fred is now 30. Let's hope Fulham come in and make that offer and don't quibble over 5 million. Let him go and get that money, and we'll use that later in the transfer uh, market for bigger players. I mean, Henderson, when are Forest going to come in and get him if they want him that much? That's fairly quiet at the moment. I suspect Maguire's on his holidays, and it won't be till he comes back with his agent. And Ten Hag tells him the way it got through to De Gea, Harry, you really haven't got a future here at this club under me. If you want to keep playing for England, feel free to go and see if you can get another club. It has to be. He has to be told that he's hanging on there. But Kylie's on huge, huge money, and he may be greedy enough just to sit there and be happy to play the odd game. But he won't play for England next year, I don't think.
Yeah, that's why I don't think you'll see Harry Maguire go to Saudi Arabia like other players are doing because he'd probably lose his spot in the England team, and we know that's very precious to him.
Yeah.
He's very proud to play for his country. So I don't see that happening in the immediate term. Now, the signing of Amrabat is apparently being linked to the potential sale of a Fred or a McTominay. He would come in to replace one of those if they were to go out. Now, Fred, it seems as if Fulham are interested. Um, United want 20 million and they want to pay a 10. Maybe they'll come to an arrangement where they pay 15. That would make sense
Yeah.
to me. But I think
Well,
McTominay is more valuable. United could potentially, because of his age, and how well he plays for his country,
yeah.
and he can get goals if he's played further up the pitch, that he could go for 30 million. Now it's no surprise. No, we've seen the likes of Newcastle and West Ham being linked with him, but also Roma now have been talked about, and that's not a surprise because Mourinho, if you remember, was the one who brought McTominay into the first team and is a fan of the player. So,
Mm.
um, if we get offered 30 million for Scott McTominay, I would take the money immediately.
So would I. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Uh,
I
Yeah,
don't.
and the Fred thing, let's get it done quickly. There's no movement. We're not, and is it because people just think, oh, we'll wait until the last week, and they know United don't want them on the payroll anymore, and they might get these players cheaply. Let's get some money for them. I mean, they've been gone. Some of them have gone through, like McTominay, through the academy, and the club spent a lot of money on. And as you say, he's an established Scottish international. That must make him a 30 million signing, in my view. I would have thought.
Yeah, I would think so, given the going rate for a lot of players at that level at the moment. And if United can't do a deal for a goalkeeper, I still think that's an unlikely scenario. Then they're going to have to look at giving Dean Henderson another chance.
Mm.
But I definitely think that it's Plan B or Plan C at the moment, though. But assuming it all goes to plan and we get Onana again, we could get £30 million for Dean Henderson, I think, from Nottingham Forest.
Well, that would be great. But let's move it on. But of course, he's injured. He's back in training, isn't he? He's just. But it's is it September before he's able to play first team football? That might stall some offers for him. I think
Yeah, I think he's doing very basic training at the moment. That's why I understand. So it looks as if on the tour, as things stand, Tom Heaton is going to be the number one goalkeeper.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. Interesting, Jack Butler today, who's gone to Rangers, and he was certainly blowing up the hay and what he learned from watching a seasoned professional goalkeeper and all the rest of it. But you and I, as we've discussed earlier, he's come to the end of his Old Trafford reign, and we need to get him replaced as ASAP. Okay, definitely do.
Yeah, I think it makes sense for everybody to move on. That being said, if he goes to somewhere else in the Premier League or Europe, he's going to have to take a significant pay cut. The only way he's going to get big money, I think, is if he decides to go to Saudi Arabia, like a lot of players are doing at the moment. But we'll wait and see what he does there. I just think it's time for us to move on from De Gea. We appreciate everything that he's done,
Yeah,
but it's a bit like when Real Madrid parted ways with Iker Casillas. He was a legend at the club, but this club no Real Madrid know when's the right time to let you go, and they got it absolutely spot on. So
absolutely. But Kyle, one of the legacy of David De Gea is the payroll issue. That was a big mistake given a goalkeeper. Imagine a goalkeeper earning 375,000 a week. Now they didn't qualify for the Champions League, so that dipped. He only brackets got 286,000 a week last season because we were in the Europa League. But they're very close United to coming out and saying they finalised a 5 year deal with Rashford, and the figures are astronomical. A 5 year contract, and they're talking about maybe 350 for him, just a little below the head. That means that if you're going for that guy Osimhen and Napoli and Harry Kane, they're going to have to be on the same level as Rashford. So they're creating that problem for themselves. So they need to be careful. That 350,000 a week is an awful lot of money in this day and age.
yeah, it's too high in my opinion.
Yeah.
But when Rashford is already on 250
Mm.
and he's performing better than he's ever done, then the only way is up in terms of his salary. So I'm not surprised it's gotten this high. But for me, it's far too much. Um, they maybe should have given him another season, see if he can replicate what he did last season or do even better, and then offer him the big money. But then they don't want to risk Rashford leaving the club on a free next summer. That would probably be a disaster, given that in today's market, Rashford is probably worth £100 million. You
Yeah,
know.
he would be. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, how much is Jadon Sancho worth then, in your view?
Well, according to Chris Wheeler in the Daily Mail, he did like a spread on the players that United want to get rid of, as many
Oh,
as
yeah.
13 players,
Yes, I
and
saw that.
he showed all the
45
figures.
million. Yeah.
Yeah, he showed all the figures, and Sancho was 45. What I thought was very, very low for a player of his age and potential that he's got. United paid 73 million pounds for him. 45 is a very low figure, but I have to say, if we were offered that, you'd have to consider it, wouldn't you? If it
Oh, I take it definitely. I mean, the figure reflects that he's no longer in the England panel and England squad. He doesn't play well enough in the Premier League to be a member of Southgate's England squad. And I thought he was going to be a superstar. It just that doesn't happen. But I could go over my 50 odd years watching this club. There's maybe 20 players I could name who came to the club and just couldn't hack it. It just didn't work for them. So you have to move them on, you know. And that money would, well, what we could use that money on top of the what's left to buy one of these strikers at these dear rates, because that's the glaring omission is the centre forward, and we need one very, very badly.
Yeah, we certainly do. But like I said, it seems like it's going to be a young player in that position. I tell you what, I think I know what your views on this will be. Um, Now, if we only sign one striker, and especially if that's a young player, I have a feeling that Martial will be retained as backup, and I'd be happy just to move him on. But I could see Ten Hag retaining him, and especially his wages are so high. His he's not. He isn't worth the wages that he's on, so no club is going to offer him that kind of money. So I can see him sitting there until next June.
Yeah, and you see, he's 1 year left going into his final year, so no way he could get another contract. But as you say, and rightfully so, nobody would buy a guy who turns it on when he feels like it and can't retain his fitness. I think he played or was involved, Kyle, in 25 out of the 62 games that we played this season. I mean, that's just scandalous, as you say, for 200k a week. And he just didn't seem to bother when he wasn't. When he got a wee knock, he would sign to the touchline and want to go off. I mean, he's just, you can't have players like that running through the team. You want everybody playing. You can't carry passengers. And he's been a passenger for most of the 8 years he's been at the club.
Yeah, he's had about two decent seasons. The first one, and then the lockdown season. And where you know where we it was a 1920 season where we finished the season behind closed doors. People called him NHS Martial because of the badge in the middle. Now that period on his first season, that's the only time he's played well, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Um,
I don't
uh,
think there's any fans listening to you tonight would disagree with you. I've never come across anybody who thought he was worthwhile to retain for another season. But you can't get rid of guys who are sitting there quite casually on these big wages and they don't put in the effort. I mean, he flattered to deceive in the pre-season and the tour last year, and then he got injured, and that was the end of him again. So all the pre-season plans with Sancho playing off him, I remember, and it just couldn't happen in the Premier League because Martial wasn't there.
yeah, and he had a slight run on the team in kind of March, April, and May, and then again he was gone. He didn't make it to the cup final because he got injured again. Same as Anthony, so he cannot be relied upon. But you can see him being retained for another season because nobody will buy him, nobody want him, and they'll not give him the wages that he wants. So I think he'll leave on a free agent next June. But there's absolutely no way we can start the season with him at number 9. That would be a total disaster.
No, no, no. He doesn't make the runs. Doesn't get any. He wears number 9 shirt, Kyle. He doesn't play that role. He drifts out to the left where he started 8 years ago. And sure, we already have Garnacho and Rashford coming off the left. He's just a waste of space. Shouldn't be anywhere near the first team.
Yeah, there's some links here from Turkish clubs are interested in our players. Galatasaray are supposedly preparing to start official contacts for Anthony Alanga and Alex Telles, and that would certainly be welcome. Also, Fenerbahce are set to have a meeting with David De Gea's agent, although I suppose David De Gea is not really a United player, so we're not getting any money for that.
No.
But yeah, there's continuing links with Amrabat, Amrabat, the Moroccan international who plays for Fiorentina, like there's multiple media sources in Italy now reporting that he's United can have him if they're willing to pay the money, and he would certainly want to join. But imagine that would be, like I said, a fourth priority at the moment. Striker and goalkeeper has to come next because they are absolute key
Mhm.
signings, in my opinion. I'm sure everybody would agree with me on that. Yeah, so Rashford, the contract for me is too much. And like you say, Bruno Fernandes could look, if he plays really well next season, he could look at that and go, well, why am I not getting paid that money?
He
You know.
could, he could, yeah, definitely could, yeah. Look at his goals for and his assists since he arrived at the club. It's very very impressive. Players like that deserve a pay rise in negotiations. It's the others who drift along and just won't give the same commitment as Bruno. Bruno would nearly play every game every season if he could get away with it.
Yeah. Um, his fitness is like something I've never seen before at that level. Yeah, he never wants to be rested. I fully expect him to be made club captain during the preseason. Do you?
Yeah, yeah, should have been made earlier, but that's definitely one decision that Ten Hag won't get any dissension from the fan base. The fan base love Bruno, no doubt about it.
Yeah, and I don't think he's any other choice because, and it seems as if that's the direction that he was going in anyway because he'd made him the on-field captain when Maguire wasn't selected. So it'd be strange if he went in a different direction now in terms of the captaincy. But I wouldn't be surprised at some point if Martinez is club captain in the future.
No, no, no. What a start he had! Fabulous first season. So badly missed in the FA Cup final.
Yeah, and he's back in training as well, so that's a massive plus.
Any
Um,
word of Anthony's injury? Will he come back and then be fit to go on the tour, or is he still under medical treatment abroad, or what? You haven't heard, no.
I do think he's back at Carrington, but I don't know if he's participating in full training or not at the moment. I shouldn't think that. I don't think his injury is that serious, so you would expect him to be there on the preseason tour. And you mentioned Kobe Menu. I think the manager really rates this player. He's given him the odd start. He's brought him on as a sub, even though he was only 17. He jumped ahead of the pack in order, in terms of other players in the squad. Even Garner or Iqbal and Savage, he jumped away to the head of the queue. Um, and I think Ten Hag does have him in his long-term plans. Now, I don't expect him to play 25 games next season, but I do expect a slight increase in his game time because I think Ten Hag has made it clear, even in interviews and press conferences, that he rates this player and thinks he's got a big future.
Yeah, I've seen him on MUTV playing for the lower teams, and he looks a classy player, very good on the ball, very swift. Probably like other players coming through, he probably needs to be worked on his actual physical fitness and build up his body. But the potential's there without a doubt.
You could see in League Cup games, for example, or even if we're playing minnows in the Champions League, which is probably unlikely, maybe someone in Pot 4 might be someone that's you know beatable. Let's say maybe Casemiro could get a rest. And Menu could deputise for him, or even he could play alongside Casemiro and learn from him in one of these European or League Cup games. Could you see that happening?
Yeah, I could see that happening. It would be a very clever way of bringing him on and involving him. But he was involved in the squad training for maybe the last 2 or 3 months. So as you say, he's definitely one for the future and got great potential.
Yeah, and I hope he makes it. Every time, I think every fan at every club loves to see academy players come through. And United have a long tradition of bringing through young players. We still have that record in place of having an academy player in every match day squad since 1937 or something.
Yeah,
It's a crazy
that's right.
record, isn't
Right. Even I wasn't born then, Kyle.
it?
The other one coming back who may get a look on the tour is Alvaro Fernandez. He played 43 games for Preston, and I was impressed before he even went on loan. I thought he knows what the game's about, and he's fairly physical without being brutal with tackles, but very good coming forward. It could work with Luke Shaw and seems to be a good crosser of the ball, which Shaw's getting better and better at. It's another one you might see in the tour.
Yeah, I'm expecting that. Yeah, because at least at the beginning of the tour, a lot of the internationals won't be involved, because they've been playing for their countries right up until the 20th of June or so. So, they will get more time off. So I think at the beginning of the tour, but we play Leeds, don't we? And
Yes,
then
yes.
we go out to America,
Wrexham, yeah, Wrexham.
Wrexham. Yeah,
Yeah.
at least for the Leeds and Wrexham games, I don't think we'll see a lot of the players who played for their country in June,
No.
and we'll see the younger players get a chance in those
Well,
games.
you'll probably see Malatia play 145 minutes and Fernandez the second. I think that Ten Hag will want to have a look at the guy. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, I think he showed great potential both as a youth player at United and for Preston North End. So Ten Hag will be looking to get a look at him and see what he's all about, and then make a judgment call from there. Obviously Luke Shaw will be first choice, and I think that second choice is up for grabs. I know Malassi is Dutch, and he's a signing of the manager, but so far I've not been massively convinced that he's going to be a starter for Man United one day. And he's going to need to improve significantly for that to happen. So I do think the backup spot at left back is up for grabs if Fernandez can show what he can do.
Definitely, definitely, yeah.
Um, yeah. So as well as progressing incomings, we need to get a few players off the books as well. Even De Gea leaving is a massive saving on the wage bill. 375k like is
Yeah,
is
yeah.
is an enormous amount of money. Um, I don't think we mentioned Mason Mount's wage. Now I believe he's on a basic salary of 250,000, but his bonuses will take him up to 300k. Now I'm assuming that will depend on goals and assists and the medals that he wins. And also Chelsea will be entitled to 5 million if he meets all these clauses. And what we've been told by Sky Sports is that if United have to pay Chelsea 5 million, they'll be more than happy to do so
Oh
because that
yeah,
means,
it'll
yeah,
include Premier League wins and Champions League wins. I mean,
yeah,
that's the sort of ambition we need at our club.
yeah. If he's winning trophies at United and scoring goals, well, writing Chelsea a check certainly will not be something that United will be unhappy about. And
No.
so I think that deal is very well structured and probably suits all parties. Hopefully we can do all deals like that. So not only is his contract is subject to bonuses depending on performance, and so is the deal with Chelsea, and I think that's very good business, isn't it?
Yeah, it sounds good to me. Much, much better than we've had before. No doubt about that. I see Ethan Laird. It's got a buy-on clause the United have too, so that if he goes, I mean, I had great hopes for that guy. He had a few injuries now in his career. He hasn't had much luck, so I wish him well at Birmingham City, isn't it? Yeah,
Yeah, he's left on a permanent deal, just like Zidane Iqbal. Now Iqbal's sell-on clause is 40%, I think. So,
right.
um, if Utrecht decide to sell him to a big club for a big fee, then United would get a big windfall there. That's assuming he doesn't run down his contract. Then United would get nothing.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, Ethan Laird was someone that I think was at QPR last season. Now we wanted to see him get a chance there at right back because we weren't entirely convinced throughout the season of our right back options, but that
yeah.
um, he didn't come back in January as we had hoped, and now he's been let go on a permanent basis. What's your thoughts on Wan-Bissaka? And Dallow's got a new deal, and Wan-Bissaka is going to be retained because he has a skill set that not many fullbacks have these days, which is one-on-one defending, which is absolutely superb. So, what are your thoughts on them two being retained?
Well, I would have taken the money for Dallo. I thought we would look elsewhere, but the fact that we haven't got a lot of money to look at the right back, I think that it's going to be very interesting. Who's the first league game on the Monday night against Wolves? Who starts at right back? I would start with Juan Masaka. Now they both have potentially uh, great strengths in different ways. The only weakness I see with Wan-Bissaka is that if the danger comes in from the left hand side, he sometimes gets caught where he doesn't know that his man or midfielders behind him and they have an easy shot on goal. But he Ten Hag worked with him and he got better and better. So I would start with him. But Dallo, I'm not convinced. He had a very good spell during last season, and then after the World Cup, Kyle, sure he went downhill. He was very, very poor. So I'm at the moment I'm a Wan-Bissaka fan for right back at this point.
Yeah, I would agree. I'm not quite sure why Ten Hag was so desperate to give Dallo a 5-year deal, considering he wasn't even picking him. Like he didn't start the cup final, did he?
No,
You know,
no, no.
he doesn't have that much faith on him.
Yeah,
But I suppose he's looking at you've horses for courses, as they say. In big games, you'll see Wan-Bissaka play more, and against the kind of the more lesser opposition, especially at Old Trafford, you'll see Dallo play because we want to get higher up the pitch
yeah,
and get more attacking players on the field. So I think that'll generally what we'll see. You know, if we're playing Manchester City, Liverpool, Arsenal, Chelsea, you'll see Wan-Bissaka in the team or in big finals. Whereas if we're playing at home against Wolves or um, Sheffield United, or whoever,
Luton.
Luton, yeah, you'll see Dallo start those games home and away.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. But I'm sure the fan base is split. I mean, I've heard all sorts of people praise Dallo for this and the opposite for Wan-Bissaka. So it's the dilemma for the manager, and that's why he's paid the big money. He'll have to choose who's going to be his permanent right back, and let's watch this space, as they say.
Yeah, it's always good to have options. I'm just not convinced that. I think Wan-Bissaka is probably, in terms of a defender, he's probably 9 out of 10. But going forward, he's probably more of a five.
Yeah,
Where is Dallo's probably a six all round. So
yeah,
ideally, in the modern game, especially for a top team, you want a full back that is absolutely 10 out of 10 going forward, and you know
yeah,
that's
yeah.
what the likes of Manchester City and Liverpool have. So, but that has been parked this summer because of priorities in other areas. So we'll just wrap it up there. Thanks for coming on again, Nigel. It's been a pleasure as always.
Having difficulty with the sound here. I think this battery's going to close shortly. Just to give you a warning of that, but it doesn't seem to be. You went off completely there. I couldn't hear what you were saying. It's come up warning.
Okay, no problem. We're having some technical difficulties. Nigel's end, I think, is his laptop his battery is dying. So we're up there. Please, everybody, subscribe to the channel. Give us a thumbs up on the video, and get your comments in down below. And I will see everybody again shortly.